The first rule drilled into every xenolinguist at the Coalition Academy was simple: never improvise. Every sound you made in front of a non-human intelligence carried weight, chemical, cultural, sometimes gravitational. We were trained to pause, to filter, to consult databases and diplomatic trees before even clearing our throats. That was the rule I broke. It happened on Ashara Prime, a planet whose skies bent light into soft amber arcs and whose seas glowed faintly at night, like the memory of stars. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was a junior semantic analyst brought along to observe, transcribe, and stay silent while the senior envoys made history. Instead, I spoke without thinking. The Ashari had appeared in our telescopes 2 decades earlier, a civilization old enough that their cities were grown rather than built, their technology braided into biology so tightly we couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. They were ruled, if that word applied, by a singular entity the translators called the Queen, though even that was an approximation. She wasn't a monarch in the human sense. She was a convergence, memory, law, and voice, shared across a species that valued harmony over hierarchy. The Coalition wanted an alliance. The Ashari wanted understanding. Or so we thought. The first formal audience took place in a chamber grown from living crystal. The walls pulsed gently, responding to shifts in sound and meaning. Senior Ambassador Hale stood at the center, flanked by diplomats, scientists, and a nervous cluster of analysts like me, tethered to translation rigs. The Queen manifested as a towering lattice of light and form, not fixed, but constantly reconfiguring. When she spoke, it wasn't sound alone. It was pressure behind the eyes, a sense of being addressed from the inside. Ambassador Hale delivered a flawless opening statement, carefully vetted and rehearsed. Peace. Mutual benefit. Shared exploration. The translation matrices hummed, converting his words into layered frequencies the Ashari could perceive. The Queen listened. Then she responded with a question that rippled through the chamber. Why do you fear silence? The translators rendered uncertain. The room froze. Hale hesitated, too long. The question hadn't been anticipated. Protocol demanded a pause, a request for clarification, perhaps a recess. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way the Queen's presence felt less like judgment and more like curiosity. Or maybe I was just tired of watching meaning get sanded down into safe, empty shapes. Before I could stop myself, I said, because silence makes us listen to ourselves. Every head turned toward me. I felt the blood drain from my face. I hadn't gone through channels. I hadn't calibrated the translation. I'd just answered. The chamber changed. The living walls brightened, then dimmed, as if breathing. The Queen's form stilled, her shifting patterns aligning into something almost symmetrical. You speak, she said, and this time the translation came faster, clearer, without constructing a shield. Ambassador Hale shot me a look that promised consequences. I opened my mouth to apologize, to retreat back into insignificance. The Queen raised a limb, or an idea approximating one. Do not retract, she said. The unshielded voice is rare. The audience ended shortly after. The official record would later describe it as inconclusive but promising. Unofficially, it was a disaster. I was escorted back to my quarters and informed, with diplomatic politeness, that my career had likely just ended. I lay awake that night, staring at the curved ceiling as Ashara's twin moons traced slow paths overhead. I replayed the moment again and again, wishing I could pull the words back, stuff them into my mouth where they belonged. Then the room's lights shifted. A presence pressed gently at the edges of my mind. Not invasive, not forceful. An invitation. You are afraid, the Queen said, not aloud, but not entirely inside me either. Yes, I thought back, not sure if thinking counted as speaking. I made a mistake. Mistake is a human word, she replied. You revealed an unprocessed signal. I sat up, heart pounding. Why are you talking to me? Because you answered, she said. And because you did not answer for advantage. Over the next cycles, days, I think, the Queen spoke with me often. Always privately. Always in that shared space between thought and sound. She asked about human contradictions, about why we said one thing and meant another, why our truths were buried under layers of performance. I answered as honestly as I could, sometimes carefully, sometimes not. I told her about fear, of each other, of the unknown, of being seen too clearly. I told her about art and arguments, about how we built systems to protect ourselves and then got lost inside them. In return, she shared fragments of Ashari perception, how their society functioned not through command, but resonance. How decisions emerged from alignment rather than debate. How silence, to them, was not absence but space. You seek alliance, she said one cycle, but you do not know what you are offering. What do you think we're offering? I asked. Noise, she replied, not unkindly, and the possibility of learning to listen. The coalition grew impatient. Negotiation stalled. Data flowed, but understanding did not. The Queen observed it all, distant in public, engaged only with me in private. Then came the declaration. We will choose, the Queen announced to the assembled envoys, a single human voice. The chamber erupted in murmurs. A representative? Ambassador Hale asked cautiously. A conduit, the Queen corrected. One who speaks before constructing shields. My stomach dropped. She chose me. The backlash was immediate. I was unqualified, inexperienced, impulsive. Some called it an insult. Others called it manipulation. I was summoned to briefings, interrogations, psychological evaluations. Why you? Hale asked me once, not unkindly, just tired. I think, I said slowly, because I didn't try to sound right. The role wasn't leadership in the human sense. I didn't command fleets or sign treaties. I listened. I spoke. I translated not just language, but intention. I told humans when the Ashari were confused, and told the Ashari when humans were afraid to admit it. It was exhausting. Exposing. There were days I wished desperately for a script. But something shifted. Small things at first. Meetings ended with fewer misunderstandings. Silence was allowed to stretch without panic. Humans began to ask questions without immediately proposing answers. The Queen remained a constant presence, guiding but never directing. You are changing, she observed once. So are you, I replied. Yes, she said. We are learning asymmetry. Years passed. The alliance formed, not as a treaty carved in stone, but as a living process. Exchange of knowledge. Shared exploration. A slow, careful weaving of two very different ways of being. Eventually, the Queen spoke to me one final time in that private space. Our convergence is evolving, she said. I will disperse. What does that mean? I asked, a tightness forming in my chest. It means my function will be shared, she replied. No single voice will hold it. I understood then. The Queen wasn't immortal. She was transitional. What about me? I asked. You will no longer be chosen, she said. You will simply be heard. The day she dispersed, the Ashari skies glowed brighter than I had ever seen. The lattice of light that had been the Queen unfurled, diffused, became many. The alliance did not end. It deepened. I returned to Earth years later, no longer a junior analyst, no longer a singular conduit. Just a human who had learned the value of speaking honestly and of listening without fear. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I remember that first question. Why do you fear silence? I don't anymore. Because I learned that silence is where understanding begins, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is speak without thinking and accept the consequences of being heard.